Who is in charge at Everton, Greg?
Well, I mean, Duncan Ferguson will be taking training this morning, but I think the wider question we could be here all day and night trying to debate that. That is probably the issue, really. The accountability and the various factions vying for influence at Everton are dizzying, but ultimately in charge, is the top man, Farhad Moshiri, and he's flexed his muscles again and dispensed with yet another manager. Probably after one of his shorter appointments, really. I think I saw something earlier saying that at this rate, Sam Allardyce will be able to claim to be one of the longest serving Everton managers in the past 10 years, which says it all, really. But it's
the club, to an outsider, and probably to a lot of Everton fans here, Greg, was being shaped to Rafael Benitez's desires, right?
Yeah.
Director of medical gone, head of recruitment gone, manager of scouting gone, director of football going or gone. Lucas Digne sold. 2 players brought in, 2 fullbacks brought in, and then the manager sacked at the end of all of those decisions.
Yeah, it's remarkable, really. I mean, I was speaking to a few of my colleagues about this very thing last night, just how the lack of sense and joined up thinking, which has become characteristic with Everton in recent years. And you're right. I mean, broadly speaking, that was the club has been shaped to a degree to Rafa's image. I mean, the 2 fullbacks that have come in from Rangers and Dinamo Kiev actually weren't Rafa picks. So I think if you really sort of kick the tires of it, it's interesting that the money they've spent in January haven't actually been at his behest. Whether they were going to go and back him to get another midfielder or not, I don't know. But yeah, you're right. Rafa was an influence in Marcel Brands' departure because it's obviously in his nature to want to do things like that himself and not to be beholden to a scouting system that he didn't pick or a director of football. And then Luca Dean, that's the baffling one. You allow him to freeze out and win the argument with one of your better players. You then sell them to one of your direct rivals, or who should be on paper one of your rivals, aiming to finish in the same sort of part of the table. And then barely days later you get rid of him. And I can only feel strongly that Moshiri feels that volatile that the spectre of relegation got very real for him on Saturday evening when they've gone and been abject again at a team who everyone's associated with being fit for the drop all season, really. And suddenly it's 6 points between them and relegation. I'm trying to build a £500 million stadium. The idea of being in the Championship, he just can't countenance, and so he just acts despite all those things that you've listed, saying that he really should have either not done them or give it more time. It's just chaos.
Adam?
I was just looking at Everton's squad last night, and they have players in that squad who have been signed under 7 different managers. I think that probably just sort of explains how difficult this job is now for any manager who's coming in, because you have such a hodgepodge of identities. And I know some Everton fans might say, well, maybe half of those have been signed under Steve Walsh as as head of scouting, sporting director, whatever his specific role was, and then half under Marcel Brands. But you can see each manager's fingerprints on a lot of those signings, whether it's Andros Townsend and Demarai Gray feel like Rafa players, Rondon feels like a Rafa player, James Rodriguez and Alan and Doucouré were clearly, Ancelotti players. So it's just they've had this sort of sporting director model, but they've kept giving managers a huge amount of say at different points as well, but also not doing so at different points. And then you end up with this absurd situation this summer where the manager who's probably least suited to a sporting director model in Rafa Benitez, because, and this is a strength when it's going well and a weakness when things are going badly. He's a control freak. He's an obsessive over detail. He's got his opinions over how strength and conditioning should be done, over how recovery should be done. He would still argue the changes he's made to the medical department will help the club long term. Other people at the club might reject that. And then you have the scouting side of it as well, where if Marcel Brands left the club a few months ago, have they then signed players this month who were Marcel Brand's recommendations? And if so, why are they letting Marcel Brands leave the club? There's so many inconsistencies in Everton at the moment, and it means whoever comes in is going to have a really difficult job.
It seems that the power all comes from the top, clearly, with Farhad Moshiri, Alisher Usmanov, who we know is influential as well, individuals and influences around both of those people too. But at the same time, if we look at Benitez and Ancelotti, they have given them a level of autonomy. Mm-hmm. So it sort of begs the question, who can succeed in this? It's not like it's the owners running the show. It's not like the managers don't have any control. Clearly, Marcel Brands didn't have the control he would have liked. He wasn't involved in the appointment of any managers, it would seem. His preferences for last summer were ignored. He normally the director of football will be the person to appoint the manager. But when you're a Graham Potter or Martinez or a Rooney or whoever may get the job next, has it come to the point where you're looking at it and seeing no managers are succeeding that in that environment? And I don't want it.
It's a very pertinent question because, Graham Potter, the early sort of soundings are that he's not quite interested. Now, obviously, if there's going to be a formal approach, we'd have to see how persuasive that could be. But you wouldn't blame someone like Graham Potter. Why would he risk at this stage when he's building his reputation? He should have beaten Everton once this season with Brighton. Why would he risk the chaos and the potential to be going and be chewed up and spat out? Same for Wayne Rooney. Obviously, there are different circumstances and there's the added emotional resonance with Rooney. But you've got to think that word sort of gets around quickly in football about what it's like to work at clubs. And a lot of coaches, and I know money talks, and Everton have, in certain regards, the ability to spend on wages, albeit not so much the big players that they want at the moment because of financial fair play. But surely at some point people are going to be warned off this job and just be reluctant to even get involved.
As far as Moshiri is concerned, within the club, how is he viewed, Greg? And who does he rely on as a sounding board when he makes some of these decisions?
Well, so I think he still does listen to Bill Kenwright. So I think Bill's always had his ear up to a point, and when you consider Roberto Martinez's name being in the mix strongly as it is, that's someone that Bill's always favoured. There was interest certainly from Bill in him coming back before they appointed Benitez, and there's still a dialogue open there between the chairman and the Belgian manager. So he will listen to him. He has his own people around him or people he trusts. There's his friendship with Kia Joorabchian's well known, and he will listen to Kia's advice over things or his counsel. And then, as David said earlier, he will certainly listen to Alisher Usmanov as well, because their whole business career and his fortune has arguably been based on a successful working relationship with Alisher Usmanov. So he'll listen to a mix of football and footballish, but very, very influential and wealthy and powerful people, I think.
The intentions are clearly there. They wouldn't be spending so much money building a new stadium, changing managers, bringing in staff, developing other infrastructure as well. But when you look at it, especially as an outsider, and Adam maybe have a wider view on this, it just seems like nothing they're doing is fit for purpose in the modern game, in the modern era, in the Premier League, in this multi-billion pound industry. It appears that they're not best in class in anything or anywhere near it, or letting the people that are, in the case of somebody like Brands, who they brought in with a good reputation, he's well regarded in the game, and other expertise around various levels of the club, most pertinently the managers, get on with this and try and make a success of it. I don't want to use the phrase a plaything, but it seems like it's just going from one disaster to another.
I think there is good intention. I think you're right. I think it's a classic case of a very wealthy owner takes control of a club, given the level of investment, it's clear they want to be competing amongst the best. I think the problem has maybe been the advice that he's taken at times. I think the problem has also been the level of control that he's wanted at certain moments, or opinions that he's maybe wanted to give and not being able to delegate sufficiently, which have been common trends over the years with owners that have come into English football. I don't think it's as drastic as the Venkis, for example, but the way the Venkis started off at Blackburn compared to how they run the club now, I think is quite a good comparison in terms of how advisors can help shape, the fortunes of how an owner does and how a club does as well. But the big issue this season has also been financial fair play, and the fact that whoever was the manager of Everton at the start of this season was going to have a really difficult job. And I think that's one of the reasons, apart from the lure of Real Madrid, that Carlo Ancelotti left, was because he realised the summer transfer budget wasn't going to be what he hopes it would be to take the club forward. So Benitez had a very, very small budget to do business in the summer. He actually made a couple of decent signings. Demarai Gray and Josh Townsend have done all right. So I think it was always going to be a really difficult season. The problem is, they just so badly misread the mood on Benitez. There was nobody out there saying this is going to work. And yet somehow the two people who convinced themselves were Moshiri and Benitez.